If you're wanting a properly practical 7-seater right now, then your options are shrinking fast. Most car makers are chasing electric performance or luxury crossovers. But this, the Peugeot 5008 Hybrid, well, it's still flying the flag for proper family usability. This model in the latest generation is longer, roomier and cleverer inside than ever before. And yet it's more efficient thanks to Peugeot's new 48-volt hybrid system. There's no diesel anymore, but this setup promises the same kind of range and running costs that families actually care about. The 5008 has always been a car that puts space and comfort first, and now this new generation wants to prove that it can still do that, even in an era obsessed with batteries and screens. So today, I'm finding out if Peugeot's updated 7-seater still deserves its reputation as one of the most practical SUVs that money can buy, or if its competition has finally caught up. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to Auto Social UK. So, if we want to answer that question, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. However, let me give you a quick recap of the new generation of Peugeot E5008 lineup. The model that I'm going to be driving is the Hybrid. So this is the 136e DS-C6, which uses a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine. And it's paired together with a small electric motor and a 48-volt battery. Power goes through a new 6-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox, and together the setup produces 136 horsepower and 230 newton meters of torque. Now this version is front wheel drive only, and it does the 0 to 62 sprint in around 11 seconds. So no, it's not quick, but that's not really the point of this car. It's designed to be a smoother and more efficient version of the old petrol model, and it is. You'll see between 45 and 50 miles per gallon in normal use, and emissions sit around 130 grams per kilometre. If you did, however, need a bit more power, there is a plug-in hybrid 195e DSC7, which uses a 1.6 litre petrol engine and a bigger electric motor for roughly 195 horsepower. That version can do about 35 miles on electricity alone if you keep it charged, and it's also noticeably quicker. And if you're ready to go fully electric, then the E5008 uses a 73 kilowatt-hour battery and a single front-mounted motor, producing 210 horsepower, and range is quoted around 310 miles. There's also a twin motor version which is pretty imminently on the way. Prices start at around £38,000 for this hybrid, just over £44,000 for the plug-in, and around £50,000 plus for the fully electric car. No price parity here. Now, even at first glance, the new 5008 looks way more upmarket than before, so Peugeot has really been leaning into its new design language, which I love. There's lots of clean surfacing, sharp details, and it also has a body-coloured grille that just blends into the nose. The brand's signature 3-claw LED headlights are still here, and they really give it that recognisable brand identity. The overall shape is a little bit longer and also a little bit lower than the outgoing model. It's now just under 4.8 metres, which really helps it to look sleeker. And personally, I think this Ingaro paint colour properly suits it. It's slightly more subtle, metallic, and it hides that family SUV grime better than white or black. Now, around the side, you have a mix of some gloss black on the wing mirrors and also around these rear window panels. And then you also have some black cladding along the bottom, over the wheel arches, and then leading onto these 19-inch wheels. The model that I have is not the top spec model, so this is the entry-level trim. But I think it does a really good job of blending together that design and styling that's known from Peugeot, but also with a little bit of practicality. So with these plastics around the wheel arches and slightly smaller wheels, it's going to be more comfortable in its ride handling and also just a little bit more practical as well. But overall, I think they've done a very good job of making what is a large family car look pretty attractive. Don't get me wrong, it's not the best looking car on the market, but if you compare it to perhaps the Hyundai Santa Fe, they've really focused on the space in the rear seats. And by doing that, you have a pretty unattractive design around the back. It's very boxy and very utilitarian. This, however, is pretty handsome from every angle. But what about the interior? Now, I do have one interesting gripe about this car, and it's the door handles. So they're really shallow, and I find my hands slipping out of them, which is really annoying. I've actually knocked off one of my nails just because if you can't quite get a grip inside of there, then your fingers slip out of it, which is quite annoying. However, if you've watched this channel before, then you'll know my stance on interiors of Peugeots. I think they're fantastic. I really think they've nailed their interiors because the quality, it's not spot on. You will find plastics lower down and not the most favourable materials used, but they've used them in a way which I don't care because they're really interesting to look at. They're very dynamic, and I like the fact that every time you get in this car, you kind of notice a different detail. These seats are lovely, so even if you go for this entry-level Allure trim, you get these very nice seats which are a mix of the fabric down the centre, you have this kind of interesting texture, and then you have leather down the sides, or at least an imitation leather, and then you have some contrast stitching which is quite nice, and that matches all over the headrests as well. And then in the centre here, down the armrest, down this centre console, and across the dashboard, you have this really nice kind of light grey fabric. Looks a bit like school trousers, and I mean that in the nicest way, but I quite like the fact that it's a little bit more interesting to look at, and also it just feels a little bit squishier as well, even though you've got a really hard dashboard behind there. The layout is also very good for both driver and passenger. So as passenger here, I have access to this split opening armrest, which has some storage, which is kind of like stored in different designs. So you can put your keys in that top part and then put items in the centre. Not as good as the Hyundai Santa Fe, and this car just will not go near the Hyundai Santa Fe when it comes to storage and cup holders. You've got a couple of cup holders in the middle. You've also got a little bit of storage in this centre console, which I quite like because it's hidden behind this kind of like opening drawer. And then you've got your two USB-C charge ports and 12-volt storage and a little bit of storage in there. I also quite like that it still has the shape to be able to pop your mobile phone on top. Now down this centre console, you also have some physical buttons, which are like shortcuts to your windscreen defroster and also your climate control off. And then you also have your drive mode button and a volume button as well. So I really like that they're really easy to access those shortcuts. And you also have quite a nice screen set up as well.
The driver's dial display and the central touchscreen are joined together in one big 21-inch curved screen. It looks great and feels just as modern as anything rivals offer. The main touchscreen uses a tiled layout, so you can swipe between sat-nav, radio, climate and more. Realistically, you'll set it up once and then you'll rely on the standard smartphone mirroring. Below, it's Peugeot's customisable i-Toggles panel. You can assign up to 10 shortcuts to things that you use often, like climate settings or favourite contacts. It takes a moment to set up, and then it's a clever replacement for traditional buttons.
What I will say is, although I quite like the smaller Peugeot steering wheel in some other Peugeot products, in this large family 7-seater SUV, it just feels way too small. It's really petite and it gives you that go-kart feel, but this car is anything but a go-kart, so it's a little bit out of place here. I do, however, really think that it looks nice. You've got this very hexagonal design which is mirrored in the centre. You've got that nice Peugeot badge and some really good physical buttons. So you've got your climate on the left-hand side, and you've got your volume control, your phone, things like that on the right-hand side. And you've also got your lights, your wipers, all behind the steering wheel. So they're all in the common places that we know to find them. The only thing that I don't like about the positioning of this car is where the gear selector is. So the gear selector is just behind the steering wheel, and I just feel like it's a little bit out of place. I would have liked they put it in the centre console like they have on other products like the 408. Now, rear interior space. It's a bit of a mixed bag. There's some good points and then there's some negatives. So should we start with the negatives? And for me, it's going to be the loss of the third ISOFIX. If you've seen this channel over the last few months, you'll know that I was really upset by this on the new Citroën C5 Aircross, and it's the same in this Peugeot. And it's also irritating because there's no ISOFIX fitment on the passenger seat as far as I can see, and there's also none in the third row either. So you have got a 7-seat car here, which can only fit 2 child seats via ISOFIXes, which I think is just a bit disappointing. Previously, you had 3 individual seats and they all slid individually, and also they each had their own ISOFIX fitment. But now they've gone for a larger rear outer seat, which is more comfortable, and they say that that's what their customers are after, and then you have a smaller seat in the middle. In my personal preference, I really think that third ISOFIX just made this car stand out above the competition. Even when you compare it to things like the Santa Fe and also the Kia Sorento, neither of those cars had that. So if Peugeot had stuck with that, I really think that's their key selling point. But let me know what you think down below. However, despite these seats not being individually sliding, so you have got a sliding 40-60 split, so this one slides on its own, but you can, however, adjust the backrest of each of the seats. So each one of these seats individually, you can change how it's kind of reclined or sitting upwards, which I guess is quite nice, although this middle seat is very, very narrow. And then you have got back here 2 USB-C chargers. You've also got some climate, which I quite like because you can lock the climate from the front, so kids starts fiddling around with it and making it really hot in the back. And then you also have pockets on the backs of the seats, which I quite like. You've got some handles back here. The only kind of crazy thing that I'm thinking, comparing this to the Hyundai Santa Fe, is there is no cup holders in the second row. There's a little bit of storage in the doors, but you're not going to want to put cups in there. You haven't even got access to cups from this front bit of storage, and that's really, really disappointing. You actually have got some in the third row, so third row passengers can have a cup of coffee or whatever they want to drink back there, but people in the rear haven't got anywhere to place their cups. Otherwise, however, headroom is really good. This is a tall car, so I've got loads of headroom, and as you can see, I've got loads of legroom, so that's no problem at all. Space is great, but when it comes to practicality, I don't know, I think they're starting to lose a little bit of their spark. Now, inside of this third row, I'm really sorry because I know the camera angle is not great to be able to see it, but actually I've slid these seats in the second row just slightly forward and I'm quite comfortable. As long as you don't mind sitting with your knees slightly elevated, because your feet do come up a little bit higher than they do in the second and of course the first row. But actually, I don't find it too bad at all. And actually headroom is pretty good, despite this not being as boxy as the Hyundai Santa Fe. It's a little bit tight, so anyone over 6 foot is definitely going to feel cramped in the back here. And as I mentioned, you do have a cup holder. You also do have access to a little 12-volt charger here as well. So if you did want to plug an adapter into that, you could, and then you could charge in the rear as well. But it hasn't got any kind of like USB-C charging like you get in the Santa Fe. There's also just these tiny little cup holders. Santa Fe also has big cup holders, so it's really looking like, although that car is priced at quite expensive, being kind of around the £45,000-50,000 mark, if you're really looking at carrying people in the third row often, perhaps the Santa Fe is a better option. But I think if you're just rarely carrying people in the third row, maybe when you need to take a few more kids to football, I think it's pretty good. If you're wondering whether the hybrid system eats into the boot space, then the good news is it doesn't. So this new platform was actually designed to take batteries. So that means that the space remains absolutely excellent. Now, with all 7 seats in place, you have got 348 litres, which is actually really good for a proper 7-seater. Drop down that third row and that jumps to 916 litres. And with both rows folded flat, you've got a huge 2,232 litres of usable space. The load floor is completely flat, and there's also underfloor storage for the parcel shelf, although I cannot seem to find a way to put the parcel shelf in there. I just cannot work it out. Maybe it is, but I do think they need to make it way easier if you want it to be as practical as they say it is. It also slightly gripes me that despite this being £38,000, you still have a manual boot, which I guess I've just grown to really like automatic boots, that when I have a manual one, I really notice it. Once out on the road, the new hybrid system in the 5008 immediately makes it feel way more polished than the old one. So it does start silently, and it can shuffle around in car parks or traffic jams on electric power alone, although this is for very short distances. So don't expect Toyota level of hybrid trickery here. And then when the petrol engine does inevitably join in, it's impressively smooth actually. The dual clutch gearbox is a huge improvement over the previous auto. It shifts cleanly without the lag or lurches that you sometimes got before, but it's still not good at doing quick changes. So if you put your foot down, it starts to struggle. But then again, it suits its relaxed character of the car, as long as you're not trying to hit that throttle too often. Performance is fine. It's not brisk, but it is strong enough for daily driving, even with passengers on board. If you load all 7 seats and luggage, you will feel the weight, but it doesn't particularly struggle. The steering is light, which can make town driving a doddle, and visibility is also very good. The big windows really help. Now, out on country roads, the 5008 feels stable and secure, although it's not particularly exciting, but that's fine. It's a big family bus, it's not a hot hatch. Ride comfort, however, is probably its best quality, so Peugeot's engineers clearly have focused on making it absorb bumps without getting too floaty, and it works. Even on these 19-inch wheels, it stays composed over potholes and speed bumps. Of course, if you're after more shove, then the plug-in hybrid will do that, and the fully electric car feels even smoother still. But for most families, this hybrid is the sweet spot. So there's no cables to worry about, there's no diesel clatter, it's just a quiet, easy-going drive. The only small negative is that the hybrid system doesn't give you that strong regenerative braking feel that you get from fully electric cars or the Toyota hybrids or perhaps Kia hybrids. It's more of an efficiency assist rather than a part-time EV. But for the type of driving that most 5008 owners will do, I think it's perfectly fine. So how does this car stack up against its competition? The Kia Sorento and the Hyundai Santa Fe, they're both brilliant. They're bigger and they can be had with four-wheel drive, and they also offer plug-in hybrid options with more power, but they start well into the £40,000 plus bracket, and once you've added on a few options, you're starting to look at 50k plus prices. Volkswagen Tayron, however, will probably undercut those models slightly, but it's still above the Peugeot's price, and as usual with Volkswagen, you're going to pay more for the extras and all the nice stuff that you want. The 5008 starts from around £38,000, which makes it one of the most affordable, genuinely family-sized 7-seater hybrids on the market. Now, it's not perfect, you don't get all-wheel drive, and also the mild hybrid system, well, it isn't particularly exciting. So both the Sorento and the Santa Fe use a bigger 1.6-litre hybrid system with around 230 horsepower. So they're quicker and they feel more muscular, but they also start way into the mid 40,000s. So if you want outright power or towing ability, the Koreans may win. But if you're looking for lower running costs, fewer tax penalties and more efficiency, the 5008 hybrid quietly makes quite a strong case for itself. So has Peugeot done enough with the new 5008? Well, I think it has. It's not perfect. It has lost a little bit of its flexibility in the middle row, and also the hybrid system isn't quite as clever as some of its rivals, but it is also smoother, quieter and more refined than ever before. It still looks great, the interior feels genuinely premium, and also it remains one of the most usable 7-seat SUVs that you can buy without spending a fortune. This hybrid model is ideal for families who want something which is efficient and simple, but also the plug-in adds flexibility for shorter commutes. And of course, the electric version is the glimpse of where Peugeot is heading next. So if you want a big family car that feels properly thought through rather than just over-engineered, then this new Peugeot 5008 still deserves a place on your shortlist. But would you go for the hybrid, the plug-in or the fully electric? And perhaps there's another 7-seater that you might consider. Let me know what that is down below. Of course, we've got the likes of the Jogger, but I thought that wasn't really comparable to a car like this. Perhaps I'm wrong. Let me know all of your thoughts and feelings. I really hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more like it, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. Until next time, guys, see you later.